Story 1. Narcissism is not being polite to service workers, pets, or children. You do not have to like children, but you can be nice to them. I remember going into a pizza shop for lunch one day. The pizza was one of the best I had ever tried, but I never went back because as I was paying, the manager came out and screamed at the much older employee who had helped me. He used very degrading words, and the older man shrank back in fear. It left a terrible impression on me, and while I am not sure of the circumstances, it certainly did not justify the manager's behavior, especially not in front of a customer. Be kind to those you work with, or you may find yourself running a shop alone. Story 2. Entitlement. She can be a 10 out of 10 in looks and be entitled, which immediately lowers her rating to a 2. Story 3. Underestimating the significance of small emotional moments. If you do not know why emotional bids matter in a relationship, whether friendly or romantic, then that is unfortunate. It is those little moments adding up that mean the world. Story 4. Lack of integrity. It is not difficult to be honest and respectful of others. Lack of kindness. It is usually associated with a self-centered attitude where everything is happening to the person, and they believe people are attacking them without reason. I will pass. Story 5. Jesus Christ. How many times can people reword the same question? Story 6. Their attitude. Also, smoking cigarettes. There is nothing more unpleasant than a woman who smells like an ashtray. Story 7. Being inconsistent while claiming to be consistent is a turn-off and emotionally taxing. Story 8. Being confident is good. Being mean is not. Story 9. I was going to say poor hygiene, but the other user who commented constant lying definitely wins. Accurate as can be. Story 10. How you treat other people, whether they are service workers, strangers on the street, or friends, can greatly influence my opinion of someone. Especially during the first few dates, if you treat a waiter rudely, it is a red flag. Story 11. Fetishizing self-diagnosed mental illness to cover up basic social anxiety. Also, extensions. Story 12. That right-wing crazy stuff turns me off, as does being mean-spirited or cruel to retail and hospitality workers. The first time I saw Carrie Lake, the Arizona Make America Great Again politician, I thought, oh, she has attractive vibes. Then she spoke, and I thought, no, no, no. Sometimes this happens with locals I interact with in real life. They may be really cute, have great fashion or attractive physical traits, but if they are mean to restaurant workers or grocery store checkout people, or if they start talking extremist ideas, I am out. Instant turn-off. Story 13. Complete lack of effort all around. At a minimum, you should clean up. Dress at least basic and clean. Express some kind of interest in something and be kind. The standard is very low, yet somehow people do not meet it. Story 14. Fear and anger. I am not saying that people with anger issues or anxiety are unattractive, but the expression of those states is likely to repel others. Story 15. Arrogance, entitlement, stupidity. Confidence is attractive, but there is a difference between confidence and arrogance. Story 16. Cruelty to anyone they consider themselves above, such as servers or business staff, is unacceptable. If you are mean to waiters, it creates a very negative impression. Story 17. Being constantly online and having meaningless conversations online. Story 18. The way they look is a significant factor. Abrasive or outright mean and toxic personality. Poor hygiene. Extreme differences in core beliefs. Story 19. Making fun of others and thinking they are better when they are literally worthless. Story 20. Bad personality. Being controlling, constantly yelling, and putting you down. That was my first wife after 6 years of marriage. Story 21. Selfish, always on their phone mostly when we hang out, wants money a lot. Story 22. 1. Putting others, especially retail and restaurant industry workers, down. 2. Not liking dogs. 3. Lying, whether big or small. 4. Comparing themselves to someone of the same sex, such as a woman comparing herself to another woman in public. 5. Profusely using swear words. Story 23. Putting other people down. Speaking negatively behind someone's back. Story 24. En mi opinión, la personalidad y cómo te hace sentir esa persona hacen que la vea más o menos atractiva. Story 25. Oh, I have a little list for you. 1. Being unpleasant. 2. Complaining about small and unnecessary things. 3. Gaslighting. 4. Lying. 5. Having a history of cheating. 6. Talking a lot about ex-partners. 7. Expecting you to do anything and everything. 8. Being lazy, not just avoiding cleaning, but refusing to do anything at all. That's all I can think of. This is just my personal no-go list. Story 26. Being self-conscious about something you do not like about your physical self. Story 27. Arrogance, dominant behavior, addiction to drugs or gaming, workaholism, political extremism, lack of appreciation for nature and animals. Story 28. Unable to engage without suddenly losing control, assuming I and others will care about what they say. Story 29. Not actively thinking about me in situations when they should, and turning those situations about themselves is a big red flag for friends too. Story 30. Greed. Being unpleasant. If you are really into sports, I cannot hear about hockey or football anymore. Story 31. Not smiling. I am a very happy, smiley person who jokes around a lot, and I cannot handle people who take themselves very seriously and never smile or joke around. Story 32. Overrating your attractiveness. I have never been so turned off by a woman as by one who was average in looks but thought she was a supermodel. Story 33. Most women reject me immediately because of my damaged teeth. I look like I have been in several fights. A few have not minded or even liked it, though. Story 34. Greed and narcissism. Obesity and orange spray tend add to my revulsion. Story 35. A short temper or getting upset over the smallest things is unnecessary. For example, if the person at the drive-thru isn't very cheerful, it does not matter. They could have just dealt with a difficult customer and may not be feeling their best. Not everything has to be a big dramatic issue. Just relax a little and try to see other people's perspectives too. Story 36. Acting as if everyone wants to have relationships with you. In my town, some of my peers act as if all men are creeps because they are just too attractive. They also demand special treatment. Story 37. Arrogance and an inability to listen to others are real turnoffs. Story 38. The first thing that comes to my mind is that badly behaving waiters or other service industry workers are problematic. Story 39. Ghosting. I just don't understand why people ghost each other. Story 40. Negative people are those who complain constantly and always have an excuse for why they cannot take good advice or improve their situation. It is as if they enjoy wallowing in self-pity and thrive on making others feel sorry for them. They attract individuals whose solution is to offer positive energy and dislike those who provide logical solutions. Some people are toxic and hateful all the time. My father, mother, and brother are like this constantly in both ways. It is exhausting. My children and I had to move 4 hours away from the family to find peace. Somehow, we became the find a solution type despite the rest of our family. Story 41. Not taking care of things that you have control over, such as being overweight, rude, or mean. Story 42. Being mean, cheating, lying, lack of integrity, lack of ambition, lack of generosity, selfishness. I do not know. There is a whole list of things I could come up with, but this is at the top. Story 43. Lack of sense of identity. People who seem to be chameleons depending on who they are with and clearly do not allow themselves to reflect on themselves. Story 44. A lot of things are not physical, such as bad traits in general. Story 45. Smoking marijuana or similar substances, because every time I talk with a long-term consumer, I feel like I am talking with a tree. Story 46. Lack of empathy, inapproachable closed body language, poor listening skills, dismissing others. Story 47. Constant negativity. Nothing dims someone's vibe faster than that. Story 48. Strong opinions. Most of us are not experts in anything. If you have a lot of strong opinions, you are unlikely to be open-minded and may not be a good person. Story 49, being a pick-me. Yes, you can say amazingly and are pretty, but if I compliment you as a female, say thank you and be gracious. Nothing makes someone instantly unattractive like not graciously accepting a compliment. Story 50. Their personality, bag hygiene, how they dress, and their motivation. Story 51. In my controversial opinion, tattoos are acceptable in small amounts, but each additional one makes a person less attractive to me. No offense intended. My wife has many tattoos. Clearly, they are not a deal breaker. However, in my opinion, she would be more attractive if she had fewer tattoos. Story 52. Any kind of plastic surgery is instantly unattractive to me. Story 53. Anger and trying to impress people with stories of their achievements. Depending on parents for money as an adult. Being rude to workers. Story 54. People who micromanage you for their advantage say, "Yeah, you are getting your gains. Now trust me to protect your resting body." Story 55. Arrogance makes me want to scream. Exceedingly ugly behavior. Story 56. This may sound simple, but if they are too tall, it does not work for me. I am a shorter man, and a woman could be gorgeous by every measure, but if she is significantly taller than me, something inside me just says it will not work. Of course, I spent most of my life complaining that most women do not date men shorter than they are. Story 57. Being toxic, which means insulting you and not caring about what they say or do to or with you, smoking cigarettes, vaping, and using drugs in general. Story 58. Being overly self-involved, seemingly lacking the ability to even pretend to be interested in others' thoughts and interests. Story 59. Two things. When you give someone a compliment and they cannot accept it. When the genuine qualities they show through their personality and life are inconsistent. Story 60. Overconfidence, arrogance, excessive use of their phones, overweight. Story 61. The residue that collects around the mouth after working for a few hours is often not wiped off. Story 62. I think loud, foolish people are unattractive. But then, who does not? Laugh out loud. Story 63. Smoking. Yelling your point because you think you are smarter than someone else. Did I say smoking? Bad breath. Crust of any kind, such as on the eye, side of the mouth, or dried wiped mucus. Story 64. Smoking smells unpleasant and is equivalent to harming yourself because it is considered cool. Story 65. Not taking accountability for one's own actions and instead blaming others. Story 66. Bad personality for me, hands down. I have seen girls that are 6s who have great personalities, and it raises them to about an 8.59 to 9. Then I have seen girls who are 9s but have trash personalities, and that lowers them to about a 5. Story 67. When a person talks negatively about others behind their backs but acts friendly and fake in front of the same people they were criticizing. Story 68. Someone who does not take care of their body, for example, eating only junk food or fast food. Story 69. Unconventional answer, but when they do not know how to think before speaking. Honorable mention to poor hygiene. Story 70. Inability to listen. Obsessed with talking about themselves. Story 71. Bad manners, poor etiquette, littering, lack of self-awareness, dislike of animals, and poor hygiene. Story 72. What I dislike most about people is those who are rude and always think they are right. Story 73. Deformed face with a hooked nose and warts with hair growing from them. Hunched posture with a hump on the back. Gnarly yellow teeth. A large belly. Story 74. Lack of money, status, and resources if you are a man. Being unattractive if you are a woman. Story 75. Definitely, if they do not think before they speak and say inappropriate things, they come off as obnoxious, which is what many Americans do daily. They can also be conceited and close-minded. Story 76. Manipulative people are the worst. I hate people who also gaslight you because it is so insulting to your intelligence. They think they are so clever. Story 77. I dated someone who developed a superiority complex about a year into the relationship. Came out of the blue. Everything was great until they constantly responded to me with comments about how they did better, more, or had it worse in response to everything I said. For example, I would say, "That was a really tough run I went on this morning. I am surprised I did more than 3 kilometers. I was so tired." They would respond, "I did 5 kilometers last week. That's tougher, and I found it easy." That behavior was extremely unattractive and got old very quickly. Story 78. Cheating, lying, gaslighting, manipulation, and being rude to hospitality workers are unacceptable. The saying, "I'm not rude, I'm just blunt," is misguided. There is a difference. Closed-mindedness and an inability to listen to differing opinions are also problematic. Additionally, constantly complaining about how horrible your life is without taking any action to improve it is frustrating. It is understandable if circumstances are beyond your control and you strive to be the best version of yourself, but people who only complain without trying to change things are aggravating. Story 79. If they constantly talk about the problematic ex-partners they had, they are the problematic ex. Story 80. When a person feels very attractive and shows off constantly. Story 81. I lose interest when there is no conversation. You try to introduce a topic, and the person responds with, nice, good, and does not even try to continue the conversation. I understand that some people have difficulty, but if the person writes, "How are you?" at least answer, "Everything is fine, and you?" If you are busy, just say, "I'm fine, and you?" "I am a little busy right now. When I have some time, I will respond," or simply reply later. When we are interested, we create a topic such as rain being wet, and the other person will reciprocate. But if you do not even try to keep the subject, I believe you have no interest based on what the person demonstrates by not maintaining the topic. Story 82. You could be the most conventionally attractive person in the world, but if you do not know how to carry a conversation or are just boring, I have zero interest. I would rather be alone with myself. Story 83. Unpopular opinion. Tattoos and smoking both suggest low social status to me. I understand many people have tattoos. I come from a different generation. In the past, tattoos were common among prisoners, possibly in the Navy. Exceptions were made for rock stars and sex workers. If you smoke, then you might be considered low social status as well. No apologies for that opinion. I keep this to myself, but you asked. Story 84. Willful ignorance is not simple ignorance. Everyone is unaware of many things, and that is acceptable. It is the refusal to be educated or corrected that is unattractive. Arrogance, dishonesty, die-hard self-centeredness, refusal to admit when wrong, pride and bigotry, lack of willingness to self-reflect, and unwavering hypocrisy are all negative traits. Story 85. I am not rude to service workers, but I will say something if they are being disrespectful, rude, or condescending. I usually let it slide since I know how busy the kitchen can get. Story 86. Mansplainers and people who, when they are upset, want to bring down the whole room. Story 87. Being overly self-centered. Excessive drug and alcohol abuse. Being overly negative about everything. Uninformed ideas about how the world is and how it works. Poor hygiene. Story 88. Willful ignorance is the refusal to learn something new or to see a different perspective. Story 89. Being immature and always seeing things at the surface level. No self-consciousness at all. It is like their brains have not unlocked the extra layer that allows them to examine their own thoughts. Story 90. People who go out to eat with someone else but are on their phone the whole time. Why bother coming out then? This is true of anyone, not just in romantic relationships. Story 91. I would say a person who is unable and unwilling to connect with you on a level that is important to you is rare. It shows genuine respect for one another, not just in a performative way, but with a sincere desire to understand who the other person is. Sure, you can say and do all the right things and look like the perfect partner, but we forget that we all have many layers. Love requires a willingness to delve into each layer as time progresses and the human body and mind evolve. With priorities, perspectives, and desires constantly changing alongside them. Adapting and thriving means being present and interactive. Story 92. No manners. Being rude to service people such as waiters has turned an absolute 10 into a 0 for me. Story 93. A woman smoking cigarettes or using drugs, not maintaining herself in terms of hygiene, appearance, or mental health, shows she has little to no self-awareness. Story 94. Negativity and unhappiness. Nothing is uglier than a bad attitude. Story 95. When I see them acting differently around their friends, like they might be the sweetest person ever, but as soon as they are with their friends, they make jokes objectifying women. It is gross and feels like they are putting on a performance. Just because I am a girl who is somewhat masculine does not mean I like that behavior. Story 96. Apathy, cruelty, and pessimism. I hate people who are negative and self-deprecating. I was once that way, so I know how easy it is to be negative, but I cannot stand it anymore. Body odor is obvious. Also, visible plaque on teeth. Bad hygiene in general makes you unattractive. Story 97. Being a sheep, desperately seeking approval from others. Story 98. During conversation, when they make every topic about themselves and their own experiences, especially when it is unsolicited. Story 99. I have said it before and I will say it again. Being not in education, employment, or training is the most unattractive quality a person can have. This excludes people who are in between jobs or recently lost their job, as long as they are planning to find employment again. However, nobody likes a lazy, unproductive person who contributes nothing. Story 100. Hi to all. To me, it is being dishonest. If you lie, you are not someone I can trust. If I cannot trust someone, it is like sleeping with an enemy. Story 101. Many good answers, but I am going to go more broadly with drama. I cannot stand women who are into drama or causing drama. This includes many of the other negative attributes listed in other comments. I put a lot of effort into maintaining a life as free of nonsense as I can achieve. I acknowledge that some level of drama is inherent to life, but I do not go seeking it. I resent when someone else's petty actions bring unnecessary drama into my life. Story 102. Posting. In your opinion, what makes a person unattractive? Story 103. Probably the number one unattractive behavior and reason men get ghosted is being overly sexual before meeting in person or on the first date. Chill out. Story 104. When a woman calls her vagina her coochie. Anytime I have heard an attractive woman call her vagina her coochie, I have been instantly and strongly turned off. Story 105. Narcissism and entitlement involve believing they are better than everyone else, especially when they go around telling others how they are supposed to be. Story 106. Lying about small, irrelevant things and boasting excessively about themselves. Story 107. Swearing too much. I swear a lot, but there are basic decency aspects when it comes to swearing. I tend to use swear words only as filler words and verbs, or when quoting someone else, including singing. So when I hear someone describe more than one person with a derogatory term or simply be downright negative and surround all their negativity with cursing, it really makes me wonder if I want that kind of unpleasantness in my life. Story 108. Not accepting their mistakes and always playing the victim in every situation. Portraying yourself as helpless. Acting like you know everything while everyone else is an idiot. These are the worst types of people. Pathological liars. Story 109. Criticizing others while boasting about oneself. Story 110. Smoking cigarettes specifically, but any kind, I find very unattractive. Story 111. Hygiene. I would not touch the most attractive person in the world if they do not wash their hands well. Stuff like getting in bed with day clothes on is an absolute deal breaker too. I am not a hygiene fanatic. I have cleaned toilets, washed dishes, and raked horse manure for work. But it seems like the most basic effort you should make as a civilized human being. Story 112. There is a wealth of factors. However, 3 guaranteed ways to face difficulties are poor hygiene, lack of plans or goals in life, and absence of sexual desire. Story 113. Pinning me against the locker with his face close to mine, wearing a mask, and still being able to smell his unpleasant breath. Story 114. Being overweight in general, short hair for women, and a whiny or aggressive attitude overall. Story 115. The situation and context make a person attractive or unattractive. That is why some couples are strongly attracted to each other at one point in time, and then completely disgusted with each other and split at another. The people may not have changed, but the situation and context, the environment, did. Story 116. People who joke about someone's insecurities even after being told not to, or who are rude for no reason and later laugh it off as if it is something to be proud of, can be frustrating. Some are also very boastful in situations where it is unnecessary. To be honest, if you are good at something, you should definitely be proud of it. It is not a bad thing, but there is always a time and place for everything. Acting high and mighty for no reason is strange in my opinion. There was a guy I liked who constantly talked about the wealth his family had acquired over the years. It was annoying. I understood, but whenever we talked on the phone, that was all he would discuss. He later told me, "People think I am very boastful, but you see I'm not. This is what I have, so I don't know why people think that way about me. Do you feel the same?" I lied, of course, but I understood. He was overall a good guy and had achieved a lot as an independent person without his family's help. I liked that about him and never felt he was being too much. Story 117. Being uneducated, thinking that receiving government benefits is a way of life, setting their social media job status to full-time mother, and constantly causing unnecessary conflict with people. I am describing a person who wastes time and behaves poorly. Story 118. Not extending compassion. You know better now, but you have not always. Hating or condemning someone because they are different or because they do not know what you know is unkind. Either share the information, be curious about their perspective, or remain silent. Story 119. Being overweight is not cute or healthy. I hate the whole fat shaming thing. It is one thing to make fun of someone for being overweight, which I agree is horrible, but to be mad or upset at me because I won't date an overweight person is unreasonable. Story 120. For both men and women, being substantially overweight is not just an appearance issue, but also reflects a lifestyle that may be incompatible. Story 121. Unhygienic. Breaking your trust. Glued to their phone. Always complaining. Story 122. A general lack of empathy and care for others could include bullying, gossiping behind people's backs, or even conservative politics that harm the disadvantaged. Story 123. No hygiene, selfishness, swearing if it constantly happens, not listening to the opinions of others as it shows no care for me, racism and hatred. Sometimes it depends and it can change. These are the common traits I have seen that I do not like. Story 124. Talking negatively about others behind their backs despite appearing kind to them. Story 125. Looking unattractive. Speaking loudly. Attempting to make friends with everyone. Story 126. Bad personal hygiene. People who are overall negative or pessimistic. People who do not take care of themselves and their appearance. Bad body odor. No body odor is not my preference either. I prefer people smelling of perfume or similar scents. Victim mentality. I do not mind people who are egoistic to some extent, but people who cannot behave normally in a group or team and do not care about others are very annoying. I am a woman, and to me, men who are not gentlemen are awful. Being rude to waiters or service staff. Lack of basic manners such as how to eat properly, how to hold a fork and knife. People who tend to hate the opposite gender. People who try to be super interesting and extraordinary, but it is obvious that the behavior is fake. People who lack self-confidence. Fake people. Story 127. When they keep talking, but when it is my turn to talk, they either do not listen or start talking again. I love a chatty person, but not this type. When they make one feel bad about not knowing something, but it is them who do not know a particular thing, they change the topic so fast. Very unattractive. Story 128. Too much self-love. Acting like he is better or superior. That is always a turn-off for me. Story 129. Someone who constantly puts you down and discourages you. They do not let you talk about something you are interested in and discourage you from living your life. I have a friend like this, and it is so exhausting that I avoid her whenever I can. Story 130. Using electronic cigarettes indoors demonstrates a clear negative attitude towards others. Story 131. A performative look at me, I am great attitude. About 10 steps beyond healthy confidence. Story 132. Arrogance, entitlement, condescending tones, aggressiveness, and bragging. Story 133. Cruel for no reason usually leads to very deep underlying issues of lack of self-love. But yes, if they are cruel or rude unprompted, it makes them really unpleasant. Story 134. Physical. Too short, overweight, poor skin condition, poor hygiene. Character. Boastful, constantly putting others down, attention-seeking, unable to listen and only waiting to speak. Repetitive conversations, superficial, desperate. Story 135. If someone is generally uninformed and you get the feeling they do not understand the topic, and you cannot have a conversation at the same level. Story 136. Speaks negatively about others most of the time, even when he or she is clearly at fault as well. Story 137. Combinations of unpleasant character and physical appearance, or just one of those. I know a girl who has a marvelous appearance but a gross character. And I know a girl who has a really wonderful character but does not care about herself. She is quite overweight. I cannot be with either of them. It just does not work for me. I cannot. Story 138. Belittling others by thinking they are more important and treating others as less. Story 139. Someone who never has anything nice to say about people but is always critical and sarcastic about them. That raises more warning signs than a political parade. Story 140. Arrogance, lack of basic respect for others, and the need to include a curse word in every sentence when speaking. Smoking and excessive drinking as well. Story 141. They are too sexual. Can we talk about life sometimes? Story 142. A bad character trait, for example, hypocrisy or excessively high self-esteem. Although there is nothing wrong with high self-esteem, some people do not regard others as examples and treat them as insignificant. For me, this makes a person very unattractive. In terms of appearance, issues like acne or excess weight can affect attractiveness, although some people are not to blame for these conditions. Overall, these factors influence how a person is perceived. Story 143. Supporting any sort of discrimination is wrong. If someone feels they have the right to hurt another human because they are stronger, it makes them unattractive. Whether it is elderly people, babies, unborn children, disabled individuals, or women, it is impossible to find such behavior attractive. It is only a matter of opportunity before they are abandoned if they no longer fit in. These are the most disgusting and creepy people the earth has ever produced. Story 144. Large group of uneducated and rude friends. This says a lot about them. Story 145. Racism, unkindness, ignorance without the desire to learn, and intolerance. Story 146. 1. Person who is never wrong. 2. A person who pushes others down to feel better. 3. A person who complains and continues even after being presented with a solution. 4. A jealous person. Story 147. Arrogance. Arrogant people will always think they are better than you. You cannot have a level-headed relationship with someone whose head is in the clouds. Story 148. 95% of their personality matters. If they have a terrible personality, then I am done. I hate dishonesty and people who stand by and do nothing when someone is being treated unfairly in front of them. Story 149. If they do not have a passion or hobbies, in the words of the great Joey Diaz, you have to do something. Story 150. No self-confidence. There is nothing less attractive than complimenting someone and them responding with phrases like, "Not really," or "That is not true," or simply being unable to accept a compliment. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.